Wow. It's been a while.
Oh my God, Stuart has decided to be a cyborg. Come on, Stu.
I was just having some fun. You know, it's been a long time since we've been doing this live, but that's okay. You know, can you hear me now, David?
Yeah, there we go.
I don't know. It's been a long time since we've been doing this super live, unedited, unfiltered. Your camera's teetering. I'm making myself sound like a robot, and here we are. It is Friday, the 27th of June.
Oh my God.
Can you believe it?
Yeah.
You know, between the flags running across the stage of graduations across America, from traffic being stopped in the middle of some major metropolitan cities, burning American flags, burning Israeli flags, heck, how about just burning people? What's been going on for the last year and a half has been utterly nothing other than drama. Drama to the nth degree. Why am I saying that? Because here we are. Supreme Court has spoken. Lawfare's come to an end. And the publicity of the Crockett's and AOCs of America are going by the way of the dodo birds. That's not kingship, with the only kingship being the Democratic Party in history. It has been lawfare. It has been drama in the streets, specifically the Palestinian insanity that's been delivered all over America. Chanting from the river to the sea, Antifada, global it will be, to death to Israel, death to America, death to Jews, death to Christians, death to anyone that doesn't subscribe to my way of thinking. Hey, everybody, my name's Stuart Brisgell. That's David Solomon. It's an unapologetic discussion, unfiltered, hosted every week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, noon Eastern, with a candid conversation on bold topics, as you can see. Whether we're breaking down the latest headlines, exploring pop culture, debating politics, or delving into complexities of modern life, grab a seat, settle in. This will prove to be another exciting, very live broadcast. There is no pause button. There is no edit. This is happening now. David, you were at a couple of graduations in the years past. You're an adjunct professor, I believe, at a very top-notch university in the country called Canada. What do you got to say about all this insanity?
Look, I was very fortunate yesterday to attend my youngest son's graduation yesterday at university. And in typical fashion, which has now become typically norm, the speeches from a lot of these daises are all about, humanity, inclusivity, past transgressions. And while some of those statements are, look, I go with it. I think that there's a lot of sense behind it. I start to question those sometimes when the school goes beyond its mandate. And one of the things that drives me crazy is this notion of free speech. Everybody's allowed to have free speech. Convocation is not a political theater, but we've heard speeches from stages and statements, anti-government, anti-this, anti-that, these publicity shots and all these things, all in the name of activism. But in reality, it's bullshit. It's publicity stunts. And often you people who are standing up on that stage are just looking to get a soundbite, are looking to get their name on social or whatever. Yesterday, Stuart, there were no mortarboards on any of the students, and I found that in other universities also. They're not wearing anything on their heads, and I couldn't put my finger on why that change. Well, one theory was people, instead of putting on their hats, "Hey, Mom," or "Hi, Dad," they were putting on "Fuck Israel." They were putting on political messages. And the school said enough. But that's not enough. Because yesterday, as expected, as students walked on that stage yesterday, unfurling of the Palestinian flags, wearing keffiyehs in pride. And in one case, one student wouldn't get off the stage, just kept with the flag. And what caught my attention finally was people were yelling, students, attendees were yelling at this individual, get off the stage. This wasn't a Jewish school, people. This was a school of, there were 700 graduates there, thousands of people in the crowd. And I got to tell you, people were just fed up. And you saw the smirk on his face. This was it, Stuart. You saw the smirk on his face afterwards. He got his publicity stunt. Now, to me, and Stuart, I love when you go for definitions, but hold off on that for a minute, please. It's irrelevant that a keffiyeh is not an Arab symbol. It's been appropriated, but we'll not go there. The point of this whole thing is, all of these things are driving what? Now, there's a claim this is all about pro-Palestine, right? We're here to help the Palestinians. I want to know how unfurling a flag at a graduation is helping Palestinians. Oh, we're keeping their cause in the limelight. No, you're not. You're not. It's not working. Because if it was, let's take October 8th, 2023 as the demarcation date. What have you moved? What pawn have you advanced? The only thing you've advanced is anti-Semitism. Congratulations. You brought it to the forefront, and we now know how hateful you are. So much so that you've created an environment of hate and of insecurity that the Trump administration just had to award $94 million in security grants to Jewish organizations in the U.S. alone because of raising Jewish anti-Semitism. So what did you gain of all this is more racism. You didn't help the Palestinian cause. So what are you really doing here? What is all this? Stopping traffic to have a protest. Stopping ambulances from getting through in traffic, Stuart. And I saw this with my own eyes. They stopped ambulances that need to get to the hospitals. Is that going to help the Palestinian cause? Shooting up a school, firebombing a synagogue, attacking violently students in universities that Columbia and Harvard have been guilty of not protecting their students. How has this worked for the cause? Israel's always being accused of having terrible PR. Stuart, I think that this group has got terrible PR. Yeah, they were headline news for the longest time. And they still get the headlines. But they're also getting the annoyance of the general public. People are getting fed up of these protests. They're getting tired of these things because it's not really what it's meant to be. It isn't meant to be helping poor Palestinians. Are you raising money for their cause? Are you trying to make a political change? You call out from the river to the sea. You call out all these things. And there was a funny story yesterday. There was a family of 4, all wearing keffiyehs. And the best line came from the students that were around me. It wasn't even from me. I thought it. I didn't say it. But when they said it, I laughed out loud. Notice how white the people are with the keffiyehs. And it was just the statement is where you go with this is you're not creating positive awareness for the Palestinian cause. You're just being disruptive. You're creating these publicity stunts. And all you're doing is creating more hate, more noise, but people are just getting fed up, Stuart. Really. I don't know what's like in Florida, but people here are.
Yeah, Florida is simple. If you're going to start a traffic jam in the middle of the street and protest, they can run you over. Florida has pretty much put its line in the sand where the insanity will not ensue. And if it does, you can run them over. Literally, stand your ground. I am personally perplexed why people that are wearing these keffiyehs don't even know the definition that they're representing the unbeliever, and that would therefore mean they would be destroyed and killed in line. From the river to the sea, little Satan, big Satan, I think we've finally come to the determination that, if you're not with us, you're against us. And frankly, I think the Supreme Courts are finally deciding they're with us, and that freedom of speech isn't freedom to hate. and hate speech isn't free speech. These are all things that we've gone over for the last 5 years. And to touch on this topic, it's hurtful. I would say that if we sat here on this broadcast and talked about any other minority in 10% fashion of what's being discussed about Israel and Jews in America, there would be the incitement of, I couldn't even begin to tell you, making Rodney King in the LA riots look like Mary Poppinsville. It is a time where common sense has left even the smartest group of people. They were supposed to be New Yorkers, right? That was where the brass tacks of the United States lied. And they've just elected someone who's a total socialist. Now, you've got to also put into perspective that these people, the youth, have really little hope. Why do they have little hope? Because the governments that have been there before have done nothing for them. By increasing the productivity of America, and by bringing manufacturing to America, and by putting things straight versus globalism, will actually give these kids something to look forward to. Sorry. It isn't that United States is better than Canada, but United States has to take care of United States a little bit too. And it's not that Canada is the drain on the population. It's not. Canada is our second largest trading partner, right? Mexico being our first. And we all live in North America, so we're not enemies. We all share borders. But when there are lawlessness going through the streets and anti-Semitism going through the college campuses, through the political alleys, and through the news, you have to understand what's going on isn't what's going to get going on, because it needs to come to an end.
But here is the story. But you said some really great things. But this is what has happened here. These publicity stunts. I found it remarkable. First of all, how many Muslim students walked across the stage and didn't say a bloody word? And you could tell where a lot of them you saw where they were from, right? Based on last names, based on you spoke to them, you find out that they're from these so-called countries that the enemies of Israel, but they're not. A lot, and they stayed quiet. They're not going down this road. But it's interesting who's picked up the cause, and it's the haters. And I'll give you one more little thing that is just really disgusting. Okay, so the Gay Pride Parade is here in Montreal, and guess what? They don't want Jews in the parade. You heard that? Jews cannot be there because other groups don't want them to be part of it. Other gay rights groups. And so here's what you've created. What you've created with this so-called pro-Palestinian wasn't it. And this is what I'm trying to say. This publicity stunt was not for Palestinians. Was to turn the hate on Jews in such a way that we are going to marginalize Jews to perpetuate their cause. There's no doubt when you're sitting here and you're gonna bring in a guy like Zohar Amrani in New York, as you said, he's only there, or one of the major reasons they're there is because of all the publicity stunts that have happened since October 8th, 2023. It is not because he's some genius. It's that people have bought into this cause, this socialist, communist, hate-ridden cause. But in the meantime, all you people who think you're helping Palestinians, I haven't figured out how. If you could tell me how any of these protests, any of these, violent attacks, any of these political appointees have helped Palestinians, I want to know. Because if it wasn't for the Israelis and the Americans, Gazans would not be getting any help, any food, because the UN hasn't done anything, and Hamas keeps taking things away. And if you don't have that whole humanitarian fund by the US and the Israelis, so what did these pro-Palestinian protesters do? They did nothing. They created more problems. They didn't help. So all of these stunts on graduations, all of these stunts that you see in streets, all of these things that this violence that you're doing is not to help Palestinians. Let's get real.
It's all about perpetuating hate. And the test case is the Jews. Because if we can get away with the Jews, who's next?
Yep.
We've seen
David,
this before in history.
this has repeated itself throughout history, but we're not going to go down that rabbit hole because I go down that really quick. All right, David, I'm going to wrap it up. And that brings this episode this week to a close. Not an end to the problem, just the end of this week. All right, everybody, we truly appreciate you tuning in and sharing your time with us. Your support engagement means everything as we continue to foster a very honest, open, thought-provoking conversation. We're here every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, noon Eastern. We're here to stay connected on social media. Grab a chat, give us a ping. Hey, you don't like us on YouTube? We still are there. We still love you. Anyways, take care, stay safe, and if you don't want to talk about it, that's all on you. See ya.